Okay, so today we're going deep into, American healthcare.
Sounds fun.
Right, always is.
Always a good time.
It's never boring, that's for sure.
Nope.
But specifically, we're talking about UnitedHealthcare.
Okay.
And, just for our listeners out there, UnitedHealthcare is like the big kahuna of health insurance in the U.S.
The 800-pound gorilla.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They cover something like 50 million people,
Wow.
which is just an insane amount of people.
That's huge, yeah.
That's like, I think I did the math. It's like the entire population of California and then some.
Oh, wow.
And so we're talking about, almost 1 in 6 Americans
Wow.
are insured by this one company.
That's a lot of responsibility.
Yeah, and they're dealing with some pretty major leadership challenges right now.
Yeah, I mean, the circumstances are certainly unique.
Yeah, I mean, usually when we talk about, CEOs and the pressure they face, it's like, typical business stuff.
Right.
But this has like a whole other layer to it.
There's a real human element here that you can't ignore.
Right.
We're talking about the murder of their former CEO, Brian Thompson.
Right.
Shot and killed in New York City back in December.
Yeah, December 4th.
And the fact that the suspect is facing terrorism charges just adds another layer of complexity to the whole thing.
Exactly.
It's not just a random act of violence.
Right. It suggests that there's something a lot bigger at play here.
Exactly. There's a level of anger and frustration there directed at the healthcare industry.
Especially towards these big insurance companies.
Yeah, and that's the situation that Tim Knoll, the new CEO, is stepping into.
And I was thinking about that, like, just put yourself in his shoes for a second.
Yeah.
It's got to be incredibly daunting.
Absolutely.
Not only are you taking over this massive company,
right,
but your predecessor was literally murdered.
Yeah, and there's this cloud of public scrutiny hanging over the entire healthcare industry.
And it's not just like, any scrutiny. It's like...
It's intense.
Right.
People are angry about healthcare costs.
Yeah, I mean, it's expensive. It's confusing.
The system is incredibly complex.
And, there's this perception that, these companies are putting profits over patients.
It's a tough spot to be in, for sure.
Yeah, so, before we even get to talking about what this means for UnitedHealthcare, let's just back up for a second.
Sure.
And talk about the American healthcare system. Why is it so complicated?
Well, it's different from a lot of other developed countries because it's primarily a private system.
Okay.
So, in a lot of other places, healthcare is seen as more of a public service.
Right.
You pay taxes and then the government provides healthcare.
Right.
But here in the U.S., we rely heavily on private insurance companies like UnitedHealthcare.
So like a lot of middlemen.
Exactly. It creates this complex web of payers, providers, and regulations. Yeah, and it's tough to navigate even for people who work in the industry.
Why bet?
And that's part of the reason why healthcare costs are so high in this country.
Right, because you've got all these different players involved.
Exactly, and they all want their cut.
And then you've got administrative costs on top of that.
Yeah, and we haven't even touched on drug prices.
Which is a whole other can of worms.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, it's like this perfect storm of issues.
Absolutely.
That's created this really difficult situation.
Yeah.
Okay, so back to Mr. Knoll.
All right.
He's walking into this pressure cooker. What do you think his priorities are going to be?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Does he try to kind of maintain the status quo focus on profits, keeping the shareholders happy?
Or does he try to do something different?
Yeah. Does he address some of these public concerns about the cost of healthcare and access to healthcare?
Right.
It's a tough balancing act.
And then you have this added element of Mr. Thompson's murder.
Yeah, that hangs over everything.
It just highlights how much emotion there is surrounding this issue.
Exactly.
Even if we don't know the exact motive.
Right, but it raises questions about the risks involved in leading a company like this.
Not just the risks of the company.
But the personal risks.
Right, and I think that's what makes this whole situation so fascinating.
It goes way beyond just business strategy and profits.
Right, it's about leadership.
It's about courage.
About making tough decisions in a really challenging environment.
Yeah.
So we want to leave you with this question.
Okay.
Imagine you're in Tim Knoll's shoes. What would you do?
It's a tough one.
How would you navigate this complex landscape?
With all the expectations.
With the potential for, criticism.
Or worse.
This is a story that's still unfolding.
It is.
And it'll be interesting to see where it goes from here.
Absolutely.
All right, that's all the time we have for today's deep dive.
Until next time.
Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Bye.